Hey. That is a disgusting act by Randy Moss.
He did what?
Jackpot, baby!
Ice up, son. Ice up.
That is blasphemous.
You can put it on the board. Yes.
The Eastern region is where we find number 1 seed Baylor. Number 2 seed Kentucky. Purdue is the 3, and UCLA is number 4. And if I'm being honest, I know I talked about teams that maybe shouldn't have been seeded as high as they were, to end out our number 1 when we talked about the Western region with Gonzaga, when we talked about last teams getting in. I know we were talking about Iowa State and Michigan. I probably shouldn't have been solid in or whatever. The Eastern bracket honestly makes me look at this and I see a lot of possibilities for upsets. The Eastern bracket has huge upset potential. My number 1 upset is Indiana over St. Mary's. As I mentioned when we were talking about Indiana being one of the last 4 in, is the fact that Indiana I thought should have had a first round bid. Indiana over St. Mary's. St. Mary's is the 5th seed, and they'll be playing Indiana tomorrow. As a 12-5 upset, I love Indiana over St. Mary's. I'd pick. I think I did pick Indiana in my bracket. I have to check, but I think Indiana has everything it takes. They've got a great point guard in Xavier Johnson. They've got Trace Jackson Davis that can pretty much do it all, and they've got some other guys as well. Mike Woodson is an incredible coach. Glad to see him back in Indiana. And I think this year they are out to prove a lot of people wrong. As I mentioned, they were a team that was middle of the pack in the Big Ten, and they were trying to prove to everybody, hey, we can beat the big dogs. We can beat those teams at the top of the food chain. And they did, and yet the selection committee still thought that they needed to play one extra game than everybody else to be in the tournament. Be in the field of 64, I should say. So I love Indiana over St. Mary's. I think that has got huge upset potential. But going to the top of the bracket, Baylor as a number 1 seed, I don't see them getting to the Elite 8. And if they do, they're not making it to the Final 4. No way. Obviously, they're going to beat Norfolk State. That could happen. But let's take a flashback to about, 2013, 2012 or so, when Norfolk State was a 15th seed, and they beat, I believe, Missouri. So I'm not saying Norfolk State's going to beat Baylor, but and 15 seeds, only 9 of them have won all time. Against 2 seeds, they've only won 9 games. I'm not saying Norfolk State's going to be the second 16 seed to beat a 1, but Norfolk State has been known to pull some upsets. But I think Baylor's obviously going to win that game tomorrow. One matchup down is a great matchup between North Carolina and Marquette. Breaks my heart, kind of, to a certain extent, to see Daryl Morcell having the season of his career with Marquette. And for those of you that don't understand it, Daryl Morcell played with Maryland before he decided to use his extra COVID year to go play with Marquette. And, he was averaging, a ridiculous amount of points. I don't remember his average specifically, but there were plenty of nights where he had dropped 30 points, which I don't think he ever did at Maryland. He was more of a glue guy, leadership kind of guy, and he goes to Marquette and he just drops 30 points every other game. So I'm glad to see that from that standpoint, that he played at Maryland, rooting for him, everything like that. But also I would have liked to see him do that at Maryland. But they're going to be playing North Carolina tomorrow. That's going to be a huge game. As North Carolina has been the team that nobody can really figure out. They first year post Roy Williams. They've got a lot of talent in. They got the point guard. Is it Caleb Love? I believe that's his name. They got Leaky Black. They've got Armando Bacot, Brady Manick. I mean, they've got the guys, right, to win a few games in this tournament. They've been able to, with a few exceptions, or I should say, they have not been able to, with a few exceptions, beat top teams. And what I mean by that is North Carolina is one of those teams that, sure, they can go and beat, the bottom feeders of the ACC and teams like that. But as soon as, you look at when Duke came to Carolina, came to play, Duke blew them out of their own building. And then North Carolina, of course, returned the favor later that year, later this year. But Carolina, that was the big issue with Carolina was, sure, they'd go and beat teams that, going into the game, you say, okay, they should win this game. But whenever they would play a top-tier team, they would drop the ball. And that was when that was why people were not so sure about them. And I think you take a look at them against Marquette. I like their chances against Marquette. And, North Carolina had been up and down all year. And what I'm kind of getting at is if the right North Carolina team comes to play in the second round against Baylor, I could see North Carolina beating Baylor in the second round. That would be one of the bigger upsets of the second round, I would believe. But it's also one of the more realistic ones, I think, as well. I could see that happening, but they got to beat Marquette first. As I mentioned, St. Mary's, Indiana. I'm not crazy about St. Mary's. However, I will be honest with you. I know I watch a whole lot of basketball, but I haven't seen St. Mary's play too much. A, because they are in the Western Conference, meaning they're obviously out west, the West Coast Conference, I should say. But honestly, like that division, that conference, I should say, there's Gonzaga, St. Mary's, BYU, and that's pretty much it. Other than that, you've got Pepperdine, you've got Pacific, you've got teams like that. And gonna be honest here, not a lot of competition in the West Coast Conference. St. Mary's makes it to the championship game, lose to Gonzaga again. So, but that's the thing. The competition for them this year hasn't totally been there. Sure, they go 25-7, but I look at their schedule and I just don't see any big wins. It's not there, and I don't know. I just love from a standpoint of a 12-5 upset. I look at Indiana and I say Indiana over St. Mary's is the 12-5 upset that I think is most likely to happen. UCLA and Akron, I don't know. What do you want me to say here? I guess Akron could give them a run for their money. I don't think so. I think UCLA is going to win that one easily and face Indiana most likely in the second round. Texas and Virginia Tech is probably one of the more interesting matchups of this first round. And as I mentioned, looking at this Eastern bracket, it's interesting matchup upon interesting matchup upon interesting matchup. I mean, you look up and down this bracket for the first round, and you're saying, "Oh my goodness, that's a good game. That's a good matchup on paper, at least. That's a good game. That's a good game. Possible upset there. Possible upset there. I mean, we could go on all day." Virginia Tech beats all the odds as the 7th seeded team in the ACC tournament, and they win the whole thing and get the automatic bid. And now a lot of people are saying, well, look at Virginia Tech. Well, where were you a month ago when Virginia Tech was, being written off as a team? Oh, they're not going to make the playoffs. They're, the tournament, I should say. They're the next 8 out or whatever, right? All of a sudden, they go and make a little bit of a run in the ACC tournament. And even going into that Duke game, a lot of people are saying, oh, wow, look at this Virginia Tech team, a team that, wasn't probably going to get in. And obviously, if they win, they'll get the automatic bid. And then they win, and now everybody's like, "Oh my goodness, look at the Hokies!" All right, where was that energy before? Right? Nothing. You didn't hear anything about Virginia Tech before they go and beat Duke in the ACC championship game. And no disrespect to Texas, right? They've got Chris Beard in his, I believe, first year there. Last year, with it being like the whole COVID year, like that just kind of messed with my mind a little bit. So I apologize if he was the coach last year and I just don't remember. But I believe this is his first year in Texas. Not bad. 21-11 record. He was, top 25, hanging around there for most of the season. Texas was. I really like what they got with Andrew Jones and another guy that I can't remember his name for the life of me, which is bothering the absolute, goodness out of me. But I like what they have going on in Texas, but I think Virginia Tech is a team right now that not only are they on a hot streak, but they have to be coming into this tournament saying, hey, nobody really believes in us. We ran the gauntlet in the ACC. We're in this field. Now we're going to make some noise. That game will be coming up on Friday. Purdue, Yale, again, I don't know what you want me to say. I don't see Yale as a 14 seed really doing anything here. I like Purdue to win that game at least, but I think Purdue could definitely run into some trouble down the road. Murray State, San Francisco in the 7-10 matchup in the Eastern Regional. I don't know. Murray State went 30-2. They dominated their conference. They didn't even let Belmont really do anything. And this is not John Morant, remember, right? When Murray State had the great year with John Morant, it was like, oh, it's just because of him, But no, this time it's not one player. They got tons of shooters there at Murray State. And San Francisco, I forgot to mention them as a West Coast Conference team, my bad. So it's really Gonzaga, St. Mary's, San Francisco, and BYU, and then that's pretty much it when it comes to West Coast Conference teams. Forgot to mention San Francisco. They're a team that they had a good year, but I don't know. I really like what Murray State's got going for them, but I don't know that Murray State has what it takes to make a Sweet 16 or Elite 8 run. Primarily because you look down one and you see second seed Kentucky, who, gave everything they could at Tennessee. Tennessee just outplayed them in that SEC semi. Kentucky will probably beat St. Peter's, right? The 2-15 upset doesn't happen all that often, so I would imagine Kentucky wins that game. And in possible second-round games, as I mentioned, I love the possibility of Carolina and Baylor. I think that could be an absolute dandy of a game. Indiana, UCLA, while I would like UCLA to win that game, I don't know, Indiana could put up a good fight there. And also for UCLA, just take a look at them for a minute. Not even thinking about forget Indiana. UCLA for a minute here. They had trouble when it came down to beating other top teams in the Pac-12, right? USC, they had trouble with them. I understand that's their rival, but they had considerable trouble with USC. Arizona, sure, they won the one game, but then they also balanced out. It canceled out, I should say, with the other game where they didn't look so good against Arizona. So with UCLA, it feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. And while they're still a great team at 25-7, they were a team that, you feel like maybe they leave a lot left. There's a lot left to be desired for UCLA this season. But I do like their possibility of getting to the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. My pick is that they'll be in the Elite 8 against Kentucky. Purdue, as I mentioned, I think they'll beat Yale. And a possible matchup between them and Virginia Tech or Texas, I don't know. Purdue is another team that, while sure they were great in the Big Ten for the majority of the season, there were times where it seemed like they just kind of dropped the ball a little bit. And what I mean by that is they were, this ranked 2nd and 3rd, and they were in the top 5 for a good portion of the season. And then they struggle against Indiana. They lose 1 of 2 games against the Hoosiers. Struggle in the other one. They dropped the Big Ten championship game against Iowa. They, struggled in games against Illinois. Even on Super Bowl Sunday, even Maryland of all teams almost beat Purdue at Mackey Arena, mind you. So it felt like Purdue was another team very similar to UCLA, where it was like, hey, they've got all these great teams. They've got all these great players. You look at guys like Tiger Campbell and Johnny Juzang in UCLA, and then you look at Purdue, you've got guys like Jordan Ivey and Zach Edey and Williams, but it just seems like Purdue just can never put it all together and win convincingly. And I think if you play Texas or Virginia Tech, I would not be surprised if Purdue loses that game. And even if they do make it to the Sweet 16, I see them playing Kentucky in this path. Kentucky's gonna be ready for Purdue. Kentucky's gonna have something for them, and it's not gonna be so easy for Purdue to hang with Kentucky. And I think a lot of people say, oh, Kentucky's being a little overblown here. I don't know. I think Kentucky, if you match up Kentucky with Purdue, I take Kentucky 9 times out of 10.